Greetings, and welcome to Beatles Stuffology. We're two old friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Shh, artist at work.
Ah, artist at work. Would you like to explain yourself, son?
Oh, yes and no. I can't afford to save my life, but I had a session with an art teacher yesterday on portrait painting, and I'm just going to have a go. If I sound slightly distant during the recording of this episode, it's because I'm having a go at putting into place some of the skills, and I'm trying to have a go at drawing JG during this. And actually, do you know what? The fact that you've got a massive kind of microphone shield in front of your face helps, and also the fact that you've got big headphones on over the one ear I would be able to see helps as well, because I think that's easier than. So if you could also maybe stick a veil on, then I think I'd get you down pretty well.
I can only apologise, but I've left my veil in the other room. I know. I'm sorry. I know. It's hard. It's hard being artistic.
Yes, it is hard. And actually, do you know what? That line itself, and in fact, that general notion seems to represent some of the lyrical nonsense that goes on in today's song.
Well, indeed, which means, of course, we are covering Strawberry Fields Forever. So we're done with Revolver. We haven't quite reached Sergeant Pepper, and so we have this little interregnum in the middle, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. We're starting with Strawberry Fields Forever because we are, and it's our podcast. We can do what we like.
It was recorded before, and so even though it was a blue side, more on that later, it does have primacy. And I think as well, within the general Beatles diaspora, I think it's probably held, it's more revered, shall we say, than Penny Lane. I think Penny Lane is a song you enjoy for what it is, but I don't think you kind of revere it. You don't hold it with the same artistic delight as people like to talk about Strawberry Fields Forever.
I think that's generally true, and I also think that's something of an injustice, because I think Penny Lane is a very, very clever song. But I'll hold those thoughts until next episode.
Yeah.
In this episode, we must simply focus on Strawberry Fields. So, I mean, just general thoughts out of the way first. What do you reckon?
Today's episode, there will be random, not so random, mentions of cricket, Dave Lee Travis, and Romesh Ranganathan. And if you can predict how any of those might come up, then I award you maximum points, and you will be the winner of today's episode.
Good. We do have to give a sensitivity warning, I suppose, around Mr. Dave Lee Travis, as we did the last time he got.
We did that the last time.
Yeah,
that's fine. But actually, I'm going to say something nice about him.
Okay. Good. Well, I'll look forward to you defending the sex offender. That's certainly not where I was expecting this episode to go. But okay. Anyway, general thoughts.
We'll get onto that a bit later. Okay. I have a sort of a slightly weird relationship with this song.
Mm.
And I think that's partly because I've listened to it very differently in the last few weeks than perhaps I have before. I don't think I've paid it particularly close attention before. It's a song that I've sort of listened to, and it's sort of washed over me. But I think because it's one of those songs which is like tentpole for the Beatles sound, and therefore you get some songs that because they're trying to sound Beatley, they sound like they're taking bits of Strawberry Fields Forever. That sort of meant that I've kind of always viewed it with an element of cynicism. It's like that, oh, here's one of the popular songs, and therefore I'm not going to give it my full attention. I'd much rather spend my time listening to, I don't know, Cry Baby Cry, because that's a deeper cut, as I believe the kids say. But I've listened to it a lot more closely now, and I think I appreciate it an awful lot more now. I wouldn't necessarily say that I love it more, but I certainly appreciate it. I find there are bits of the song that are a little bit harder for me to really get into. And, the less that's said for me about the last minute, the freak out at the end, the better. Can't be doing with that at all. I'm not on board with the lyrical ingenuity that people ascribe to this. I think I think it's emblematic of the struggle that he had writing it, that actually there are some lines that just aren't coherent whatsoever. And also it falls into, as I've written down here, Lennon's amazing capacity to tell people that they're living their lives incorrectly. There's elements of that in there. And I also think the Beatles made a mistake. Because for me, there's an empty phrase. For me, it's me talking, so of course it's from me. In my opinion, the first 60 seconds of this song are just incredible. And I've never properly listened to it before. That elegiac guitar line that underpins that opening 60 seconds is just beautiful. And it's so kind of leisurely and just washes over you. It's beautiful. That little sort of slide guitar element that's in there is so understated and masterful. And then we lose it when that edit crops, and we then get the different takes spliced onto it. Because I've listened a lot to that original take, which is the guitar all the way through. I just think it's beautiful. And then when we get into the horns and the strings, I think that's the bit that people are taking as an aspect of the Beatles sound, perhaps along with the elements of that on All You Need Is Love, that people sort of pin those bits as being the Beatles sound. And I think therefore they miss something that could have been just as hold up the fingers for the bunny quotes, romantic, nostalgic, elegiac, however you want to say it. But I just really wish that they'd done more with that guitar. It just feels a shame that you lose it for 2 minutes before you then get to the freak out at the end. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for listening. That was today's episode. Oh, and no, did you want to? Oh, okay. No, apparently
Yeah,
you've got.
I'll throw something in. Why not? Why not? So I guess this is one that we're going to disagree on a little bit.
I don't.
Which hopefully will make it a more interesting episode. I love Strawberry Fields Forever. I think it is almost completely perfect. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I think it is an amazing piece of work. I love the lyric. I love how unconstructed it is. I think the instrumentation is as perfect as any song we've come across so far, and I find it profoundly moving. I find there's something really genuinely moving about this song in a way that very, very little music sort of hits me in that way. And I'll talk a little bit more, a bit sort of further on when we sort of talk about a few more things around how we came to the song. But just in general, I think it's an incredibly moving piece of music, and I don't say that about many things. It's amazing. It's also one I think that really benefits from having alternative takes available. So you've got on Anthology, you've got like the original home demo, you've got the non-edit version, the lighter version, and then there's a couple of others kicking around as well, including the one on Love, the Cirque du Soleil thing. But as it stands, I think Strawberry Fields is pretty much perfect. I've mentioned before in the podcast I have a playlist of every single Beatles song in order of my ranked preference on it. So every properly released Beatles song. And Strawberry Fields is number 5 on that list. So there are 4 songs I think that are better in the Beatles back catalogue. This is number 5. That's kind of the esteem I hold this in. But I'm also really curious, how did you come to this song? Like you said before, you've been a bit dismissive of it. Did you come to it on like Magical Mystery Tour, or was it just one you were sort of more aware of and sort of out in the ether?
I genuinely don't know. It could be that I first came across it in I mean, it's unlikely, but it could be that I first came across it in about 1985 when Dave Lee Travis was hosting a TV show called the Golden Oldie Picture Show, in which, again, for people who didn't listen to the one episode in which I spoke about this before, and there's an irony here, in which the BBC got people to create music videos for old songs And there's going to be a pause here for effect. Don't leap in too soon. For old songs that, of course, don't have videos. We'll come back to that. So why they chose to do Strawberry Fields Forever, I don't know. But it's in an episode. I was rewatching the episode this morning, well, part of the episode, and it was after the Kinks All Day and All of the Night, and then before, is it Judy Driscoll and the Brian Auger Trinity, This Wheel's on Fire?
Yeah. Judy Driscoll did that originally, yeah.
And this is the one in between. And actually, DLT, the sex offender DLT, made a relevant point beforehand. And he said, loads of people talk about the lyrics and the meaning of lyrics. Does it mean this? Does it mean this? Well, we've just gone with something related to the word strawberry. And then for the next 3.5, 4 minutes, they have film of people picking strawberries at one of those, pick your own type farms. And of course, they've been a little bit more artistic about it than that. So, within, sorry, I'm getting.
Well, it's not just agricultural footage then.
No. So it's like, families, young people, old people, people from, bear in mind it's 1985, people from different ethnic backgrounds as well. It's like, wow, BBC, love you. Picking strawberries and the kids having fun. They're eating the strawberries where they're to be putting it in the basket. A point that David Lee Travis makes at the end. So, I'm surprised their baskets are full. Considering how much. Anyway, let's not get into that. But they went pretty literal. But at the same time, there were also some extreme close-ups of the strawberries themselves. I know I'm going somewhere with this, and then cuts in a very similar way to is done in the actual video for Strawberry Fields Forever, made by the Beatles in 1967. Was it Michael Lindsay Hogg, this one, or not? I don't know.
I can't remember. I think so.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, maybe we'll do some furious Googling. But so there was that to it, and actually that just kind of. Sorry, I'm getting away from your question now. Re-emphasised for me that pastoral, nostalgic feel that I think that first minute of the song has. So it sort of fitted that perfectly. And I even thought, the introduction, I thought he was bang on about it. Loads of people talk about it, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. Here it is. We're going to emphasise the word strawberry because it's like, the lyrics are deliberately, well, are they deliberately opaque and confusing or whatever? But so we've just gone with a very literal interpretation by focusing on this, and it's nice. So it could be that is the first time that I heard that, sitting around the dining room table with the TV on in the corner, and oh, okay, well, isn't that quite nice? And I can remember seeing that in, I think, 85 or maybe 86. Whether or not I heard it before, I don't know. And I certainly probably wouldn't have become aware of its weighty significance for another couple of years after that. But that's possibly it. But I do find the brass and the strings slightly off-putting. And
but do you not think that they're meant to be? Do you not think that's sort of the point?
Because I deliberately off-putting.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the point of the exercise. I think they're meant to be quite discombobulating. I think they're meant to pull you out of the kind of the slightly blissful, idealized state that the rest of the song has existed in.
Well, that would just be an exercise in look how clever we are.
Well, I would certainly never want to accuse the Beatles or George Martin of doing that.
Okay, well, if they're trying to discombobulate me, then they succeeded with the effect of me losing some of that sort of sense of the song and its sort of deeper, pure intentions. See, I think I put this with a couple of other songs that are perfectly fine, but ones that perhaps epitomize the Lennon of this era that I kind of struggle with a bit. One would be Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which I'm really not on board with. I think it is one of the weaker songs on Sgt. Pepper. But then also All You Need Is Love, which is deliberately simple, and that's obviously for a particular reason. I kind of, as I've done before with like a through line of some of Lennon's big hits from 63, 64, 65. I sort of tie some of those together as well. And look, what I don't want to do is to come across that saying, oh, well, this is an overrated bag of shite. Oh God, oh, look at me, aren't I clever because I've got an alternative opinion. I just, and maybe this is where you're coming from. I just don't feel the warmth of this that exists in the early part of the song. I think, yes, I think songs should develop and progress. I just think, yes, it throws me out to the point where I'm like, well, okay, I can take or leave this, and that's a real shame because I'm going to hark back to that guitar part, because there's a parallel for me with that guitar part, with the kind of guitar lines that Richard Thompson was playing in some of the early Fairport Convention albums. And for me, that one of the reasons perhaps why I love that guitar playing at the start of this, because it reminds me of Who Knows Where the Time Goes, which is has become in the last few years one of my all-time favorite songs. And I think there's just sort of see that lineage, that George Harrison into Richard Thompson, and to see that there was that potential that they could have taken it from. And fine, it's gone down a route that loads of other people love it. I just think I could have loved this more, but you decided to make it more complicated than it needed to be. Didn't answer your question, but there we go.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I think I came across this first on Magical Mystery, and it would have been, we've talked about it many times in the podcast, but I think it would have been just like buying the cassette secondhand from, you know, or maybe even from like Woolworths or something. Maybe I bought it new. I genuinely don't remember anymore. But yeah, just picking up a copy in some random order, not really appreciating that Magical Mystery isn't an album in the proper sense, but it's an EP and a collection of singles. But just kind of listening to it through as an album anyway. And I think it's one that has always kind of grabbed me. I don't have any great sort of original insights in terms of how I came to this song or anything like this. I think it's just one that when I started listening to the Beatles, it was obviously a standout. And I might have been vaguely aware of its cultural significance, but I don't think I necessarily would have been aware of the weight of Reputation. And again, we've talked about it lots, but because the Beatles weren't that much discussed in the 80s, it wasn't one that we would necessarily maybe have had that much exposure to. But I've always connected with it. I've always really, really felt something very, a real connection to it in a way. And I love the way that the lyric is kind of unfocused. And I think one of the differences between, you mentioned Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and I think that's a relevant kind of point of comparison for this song. I think one of the differences between something like Strawberry Fields and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, other than the fact that Lucy is a bit try-hard, is the fact that I think Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is determined to be psychedelic. It wants to be a representation of psychedelia. Now, we've mentioned psychedelia a few times on the podcast, and it's not either of our favorite approaches, I think it would be fair to say. But it's one that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds really leans heavily into. And I know that a lot of people will say that Strawberry Fields is also psychedelic, and I can understand why, but I don't think that's quite right. I think Strawberry Fields is surreal, and I mean that in the proper sense of the word. I don't mean surreal as a shortcut for, ooh, that's a bit strange or weird. I mean it as a sort of a sense of the unconsciousness, or even slipping into unconsciousness. So the lyric starts reasonably coherent, and the more we kind of get into the lyric, the less coherent the lyric gets. It's almost like falling asleep, where things stubbornly sort of refuse to come into focus, meaning refuses to cohere. So it starts sounding like it almost kind of makes sense, and then with each progressive verse, the lyric becomes less and less focused, and it's that feeling of unconsciousness. And in that sense, it's properly surreal, not just as a shorthand for oddities. And I really love that. I love the way that the lyric becomes sort of more unfocused, becomes something that you kind of slip under. And that edit, the edit from the first version to the second version, where things suddenly become a bit more strident, a bit more harsh and shrill. That edit that's kind of the slip under point. That's kind of where you slide under and become unconscious. And even the stuff you're talking about at the end, the stuff with the trumpets and the guitars that come in the last 2 minutes or whatever, it's almost like kind of, well, that's reality reintruding, almost like you're kind of waking up. Or if you want to go down the psychedelic route, then you can say, okay, well, maybe that's the come down after the kind of the blissful trip. But either way, that's reality intruding into this kind of otherwise sort of blissful, surreal, unconscious state. And I love that about it. I think this is a really, really intelligent lyric, much more than just the sort of the slightly unfocused, and the way that each verse does become less and less coherent, and yeah, just refuses to cohere into that sense of intelligibility, except sort of within the mind of the listener, I think is a really clever thing. And I think that's one of the reasons I love Strawberry Fields. I genuinely think it's a proper surreal song, not a psychedelic song, and that's kind of a significant difference. And one of the reasons I do massively prefer this over something like, say, for example, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've not particularly noticed that about the lyrics, whether they do become more unstructured. I mean, they do. Maybe that's what I find irritating.
Yeah, that would also be a perfectly fair reaction.
And that's interesting. I mean, I would certainly be interested to know if any of our Vietnamese listeners who we've recently picked up have sort of noticed something similar as well, because that's just a sign, isn't it, that there are obviously going to be different interpretations to the same thing. The fact that you sort of view that so passionately, and I'm like, come on, John, stop preaching at me, come on, stop telling me how to live my life and just crack on and live your own. That whole thing. I mean, I don't even know if I wrote it down in the end, but yeah, it's just that weightiness that he likes to bring that I just find irritating. And maybe that's partly because I've seen quite a lot of the interviews in the 70s as well, and I find that phase where he's telling us all to wake up and live our lives differently. And in fact, I was watching the documentary that was on Sky Documentaries recently. Was it about the one-to-one concert in New York? And there's a telephone conversation that's been recorded between him and Alan Klein, where he's telling Klein that he's going on tour. And what they're going to do is they're going to take the profits from each show in each town, and they're going to go to the local jail, and they're going to pay the bail money for 500 people. And so they're then going to release 500 people because he's decided it's the right thing to do, and that the American penal system disadvantage. I mean, it clearly does that. Disadvantage those without money. And he sort of said this I've had this amazing idea, I'm going to change all these people's lives, and think, John, just Alan Klein is full of, oh yeah, great idea, lovely idea. It sounds like, I mean, now, God, DLT, now I'm sound like I'm defending Alan Klein as well. It's like, it sounds like you couldn't get him off the phone quick enough. But you can sort of imagine putting the phone down and going, well, that's never going to happen, hopefully. You think, okay, John, it's a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. How are you going to decide on those 500 people? Are you going to look into all of their cases, and are you going to decide whether or not there's any merit in them, or are you just going to release 500 people? And how's that going to look amongst the victims? Because surely amongst those 500 people, some possibly have done what they've done. And I love that you live in this idealized state in which you can see clearly at times what the path of righteousness is, but sometimes you are so far up your arse that it's unreal. And to me, this is, in my life, not up his arse. Strawberry Fields, a bit up his own arse. Both have that kind of nostalgic feel, that sentimental feel to them, and I think that I see this as at times just going a little too far you know, the other way. It just doesn't work for me in the way that it works for you, and that's fine.
Yeah, no, I do think that's an understandable point of view, even although it's not one that I share. I mean, the whole thing with Lennon's activism is a massively separate topic that I don't think we've. I was
Yeah,
going to say we don't have time to get into here. We've got time, but we can do whatever the hell we like. It's just a podcast, but you know what I mean. We don't.
yeah.
It's not strictly relevant to the thing that we're discussing right now.
And guys listening, if you don't like it, just, you know, forward on like 10 minutes, and you know, we'll have some different pretentious conversation
Yeah,
lined
I
up
mean
for you.
that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. There's something about, again, I don't know. I understand why you're saying that, but it's just not a point of view I agree with. I don't find that this is. I don't think he's up his arse. But I think this is kind of the tipping point. And like I said, like comparisons with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, like that's what it's going to become, and we'll have this conversation in the future, and I will agree with you, because I do think that's kind of where things become, yeah, too maybe
yeah,
self-aware. Is that, I'm not sure if that's quite the right expression. And then we've got the whole I'm the Walrus thing to come as well. That's again going to be a very separate conversation,
yeah,
but I think at this point he's just about still got it together, and I think as a synthesis of all of the influences and developments that have happened on Revolver, the way that they construct a song in the studio, the way that he can write lyrics, his vocal performance as well, which I really love on this song as
yeah,
well. I think it's a really, really great vocal performance from
yeah,
Lennon, and the way that everybody else just supports the song. I think this is a perfect synthesis of all of the lessons which are learned on Revolver, and they come together here. And then the next step will be Sergeant Pepper. And I'm still not sure how I feel about this and Penny Lane not being on Sergeant Pepper, because there's the whole conversation around, oh well, you know, they had to stick out a single, blah blah blah. Everybody knows that. I'm not going to drag over all the details of it. I don't know how I feel about the fact that it's not on Sergeant Pepper. Whether it would just be an album that had 2 extra songs on it, or whether there would be 2 other songs in Sergeant Pepper that got dropped in favor of Strawberry Fields Penny Lane. But even without that, just as a standalone single, that's fine. Like it works as a perfect bridge between Revolver and Sergeant Pepper. So I think it being absent from Sergeant Pepper is kind of fine.
yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, I think you might lose, you know, perhaps When I'm 64 or Lovely Rita, or, you know, something like
Or
that.
Lucy.
Well, I don't know whether or not John would have fought to have kept that, but yeah, no, it's fine. But you know, I wonder sometimes if I'm determined not to necessarily always, or rather, if I see a consensus, to go running away from it as fast as I can. And I know how universally beloved this song is, and I think that always kind of draws an element of suspicion. I just start seeing what I think are the flaws a little bit more, for example. And okay, all right, oh, blimey, I'm going to go in an area I didn't think I was going to go. Simply Red.
I wasn't expecting you to go there either. Although, given the current humidity in Glasgow, my hair is going a bit kind of mitt up now at the moment, which is not something I'm thrilled about. But anyway, yes, please give us your best Simply Red.
Okay, so I remember, this is a weird thing that you think when you're like 12 or something like that. I remember Simply Red, or at least maybe 2 members of them, performing Holding Back the Years, and possibly on Jonathan Ross's The Last Resort, which has been mentioned recently as well, and thinking, well, what's the rest of the band doing? Where's everybody else? Why, you know, what are they doing? You know, and thinking, well, it's not really a band if there's only 2 people on this particular track. I'm pretty sure it was, you know, piano and voice. Now I realised on the single perhaps there was a different version of it, but that's the version that was being played live, and so I wonder if with so much of this song, perhaps when I was younger, listening to it, thinking, well, I doubt all of those guys are playing the horns and the strings. They're barely on it. what's going on here? So it might have fallen into one of those natural kind of unrealistic and utterly daft opinions as well, because they do, you know, apart from John and Ringo, you know, Paul and George are kind of faded out of the song for, at least in terms of their traditional instruments, for significant periods of it. And I think that might have been how my early teen brain processed this, thinking, well, okay, well, it's a band, but you know, if the band were that good, surely all of the band would be playing on it all of the time. And they're not. There you go. So I'm just trying to rationalize an irrational opinion.
No, nothing wrong with that.
At the same time, it's just trying to get this headphone right. I can't quite get the headphone. I thought the headphone would be easier than the ears, but it's not. It now looks like you've got a couple of Lego blocks on the side of your head.
Great. Well, it's either that or going to end up looking like Cyberman at the end of it. But either way, that's fine.
That's a distinct possibility.
Yeah. But I think one of the things I love about Strawberry Fields is how much everybody sort of contributes to it. You know, I think McCartney's bass line is really interesting because it's a very understated bass line, but it supports the song. Like, it's the perfect scaffolding for this song. You wouldn't want anything more sort of decorative or anything that had a bit more flourishes, because that's not what the song requires. It needs something simple, and I think, whether consciously or unconsciously, I think McCartney gets that, and it isn't a complicated bass line, but it's just exactly the right thing for the song. You know, it's him that plays the Mellotron introduction as well, which is just perfect. It's just an amazing little introduction to the song, and so he's really doing top tier work, but it's not flashy, it's not showy work. It's just exactly what the song needs. Ringo is fucking on fire in this song. He is amazing. Like, you know, instrumentally, I think he's probably the best performer on the song. He's just an amazing piece of work that he's doing. I think one of his very finest. It's great. Like, George's contribution is, again, less conspicuous, but even like that Swarmando kind of fade after the chorus, it's like, that's exactly what the song needs. And it is another, again, it's, I suppose, the lessons from Revolver, but it's everybody coming together and doing precisely what the song needs. Yes, there's some lead guitar in the outros, and then Ringo gets his you know, his freak out bit at the end as well, which is kind of new and all that kind of stuff. But everybody is kind of pulling together to make this a coherent whole, and I think that's also one of the things I really love about this song.
So in terms of Ringo, I've written down 3 words, and it's all I'm going to say in it, and I'm going to say it in my best white British middle class accent, because I know that I'm making a relevant-ish point, but at the same time I'm also being deliberately kind of self-parodying. So I've written almost hip-hoppy.
Okay. Good. Well, I would love to ask you to justify that, but also I'm fine if you just want to let that stand.
I'm quite happy to let that. I mean, that's a compliment, by the way.
Okay,
when I listen,
I assumed.
when I listen to what he's doing there, there's particularly in those 2 minutes of the song that I'm not quite so fussed about. I think what's happening with his drumming is so incredibly modern, and I don't mean modern for 1967 folks, I mean modern for 2026. Well, okay, maybe 2006, maybe 2016, but you know what I mean. It's not, it's the kind of drumming that people now program and sample and put under tracks of such a diverse range of genres, that almost makes this I'm going to do Lennon type pretentiousness now. It's sort of like the foundation stones of like modern drumming in the 21st century, man. This is what people aspire to with their computer programs, man. Good.
Yes. 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 I don't feel qualified to say anything other than yes. Do you want to talk a bit about the video? Do you want to talk a little bit about hanging out in the park for a couple of days?
Tree Wizard.
Yes. All right. Tree Wizard. Go on. What do you think? Do you like the video to this?
Well, okay. I should explain. That's my Ramesh Ranganathan reference, by the way, folks. There's Taskmaster, the greatest program on television over the last 10 years. And I'm not even going to take any debate on that. In series one, I'm going to do this for non-British people. The British comedian Ramesh Ranganathan was on it, and one of the tasks was
don't do the accent.
Do something that will look impressive in reverse. And so what I would like our listeners to do is to Google Taskmaster Tree Wizard, and then if they don't get distinct Strawberry Fields vibes from that little 1 minute section of video that he creates, then there's that point in the video where clearly they've done the backward recording and Paul is jumping down out of the tree, but then they reverse and he goes up in the tree, and you think Tree Wizard, and I can't now look at it. And I think maybe that's a sign of, is that a sign of how influential it was, that now I can only think of something that doesn't directly parody it, but just does kind of come across as a bit of a parody of it. So that's the reference to that. I'm also going to do, I'm ticking off my references. I've done DLT, done Ramesh Ranganathan. It's time to talk about cricket. Okay,
I never find that to be the case, but please carry on.
Yeah, it is. Well, because this was shot in Knoll Park, near Sevenoaks in Kent, just outside London, really. And I'm conscious of, listener, there might be an edit point here that you don't hear because I might need to go and open the door to let the cat out because she's just woken up, and I've got the door closed. So we might just have to. Well, maybe the sound of the cat wailing in the background won't get edited out. You never know. When I was growing up in South London, I did spend some time playing for a cricket club in southeast-ish London, and we tended to play games. It was more sort of the Kent side of London, and I have played a couple of matches, and probably went to see my brother play in a couple of matches as well at Knoll Park. And in fact, if you look at the do a Google map overview of Knoll Park where it was filmed, you can see someone's put a pin in where they think the tree is, where it's filmed around. And if you sort of look a little bit to the west and the north, you'll see that there is a cricket pitch there. And I've got some distinct memories of it. The Knoll House is amazing. You don't see that in the video, but it is amazing. It's all sort of Sackville owned bit. So it's where Virginia Woolf wrote Orlando, for example, which was a bit of a satire of the Sackville West families, and the Vita Sackville West is a name that some people may know. And that whole kind of Bloomsbury set as well. It's an amazing building. But my memory partly is the cricket pitch. It's one of the pitches that I played in, at a tree inside the boundary, which is always fun. And also loads of deer poo all over the place. So if you're going to try and catch a ball or slide to cut off the ball for it went at the boundary, you kind of had to mentally, as a little kid, weigh up, am I now going to go sliding through tons and tons of deer poo? And when mum puts this through the washing machine, is she ever going to get that out? So there you go. Cricket, Dave Lee Travis, Ramesh Ranganathan. I'm going to let you talk while I let the cat out of the room.
Okay, great. I do really like the video for this song. I think it's really good. And in a way, again, that we haven't quite seen from the Beatles. I suppose if you want to include stuff from Help or Hard Day's Night, then there are technically examples of them doing videos, but this is a proper video. And I suppose Rain and Paperback Writer are proper videos as well, but this doesn't feel like it's in the same category as Rain and Paperback Writer. This feels like they are actually trying to demonstrate something. Now, what that something is a separate question, but like they are genuinely trying to make some kind of connection with the song. It's not just standing around in a greenhouse for 5 minutes miming, which is, I mean, that's a little unfair on Paperback Writer and Rain, but also not really. Whereas like that piano with the strings coming out of it going up the tree, that's a really striking visual image, even if that's the only thing in the video that was worthy of attention, and I don't think it is, but even if that was the only image in the video, that's a really kind of striking, odd looking thing. it sort of feels like it makes sense, but it also doesn't really make any sense, which again kind of feels like it relates a little bit to the lyric. And it's just such a striking visual kind of image, especially at night. And then when they're kind of pouring paint into the piano and all this kind of stuff, it's really striking. It doesn't really make any sense, but it's a music video. It doesn't really need to, and it's not like the song really makes any literal sense either. So I suppose that's appropriate. Yeah, I think it's kind of great. It's not perfect. A lot of the close-ups and stuff, yeah, it's clearly, this is a developing art form. They clearly haven't got
Yeah.
it quite down right. That's fine, but you can see that they're trying things. You can see that they are experimenting with visual ideas, and if they don't necessarily get all of them 100% correct, it's still, I find it infinitely preferable to just stand in a greenhouse and mine for 5 minutes.
So your own cultural context is going to be relevant here, isn't it? And obviously we are well, we're children of the 70s, but in culturally we're children of the 80s, and
Yes.
80s was that explosion in video. And so we would have seen dozens of hundreds of videos before we saw this, because I'm not sure
Yes.
what outlet there would have been, apart from maybe, if we'd have had friends in the mid 80s, perhaps who'd um, had satellite TV and were able to get MTV Europe, where they would have shown bits like this from time to time. Perhaps when they got artists to pick their favourite videos, just like I can remember Peter Buck picking um, a Lou Reed song from New York, and I'd probably never heard Lou Reed's anything from New York. It was probably Good Evening, Mr. Valdine. Anyway, it was something like that. But unless someone picked it to play, you probably didn't see it, but you'd seen a whole bunch of videos before. So therefore, when you see it, well done if you're able to remove that cultural baggage, but you then just can't help but compare it to some of the things that perhaps you've seen yourself. And I find it hard to look at it in the context in which it was created. So to me, it does have that element. Yes, it's playful, it's fun, but also it's a little bit kind of look at us, look at all the fun things that we can do with slowing things down and reversing things and extreme close-ups and transitions. And it's hard, and I appreciate this is my flaw, that I cannot divorce myself from that. Maybe just in the back of my mind, I've got the Ruttles in my head, and it sort of feels a bit too ruttly for me, which is maybe just an indication of how good the Ruttles.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to have the Ruttles in the back of your head.
No, I know, but so I can appreciate it, but at the same time, I notice little things like, for example, the extreme close-ups. It's really weird to notice that a couple of them have almost got a monobrow going on, which I never
Yeah.
thought of until I was watching it again. It's
There's
also
actually. Sorry, on you go.
No, it's fine. I've got nothing but silly things to say, because you sort of realise that there's that road in the background, and quite early on a car just sort of casually drives along, and you sort of think, I wonder if the person, whether that was someone from the Sackville family or maybe someone from the National Trust driving up to open up for the day or something, and perhaps wonder if they were looking out of their car going, what's going on over there? That all looks a little bit weird. Whether they, much like the person in the background of the photograph on Abbey Road, whether or not we've ever found out the story about, who was in that car on that day in the background of that video. I'm also sort of thinking, I wonder what they were thinking as they were making it in front of this incredible old stately home on one side, and a golf course on the other, whether they sort of took in any of their surroundings as well. What did they think about where they were? And I've not come across, I've not looked for anything, but it'd just be interesting to know, because it feels like a very unbeatly kind of location. But then three of them were living in massive houses in Surrey/Berkshire at that point. So maybe it was something they were becoming a little bit more used to. I don't know. I'm just putting things out there and I have no conclusions whatsoever.
It was just occurring to me when you were speaking earlier about like the slow-mo and stuff. This is now, if you want to take this as an overread, it is absolutely, definitely the case.
Okay.
But when you were talking about sort of videos and how, yeah, we grew up with, videos in the 1980s, which are obviously considerably more sophisticated. I also highly recommend people Google not the 9 o'clock news, nice video, shame about the song,
Yeah.
which is just perfect.
Good shout.
Yeah, but it's obviously a proto kind of video. It's a developing kind of art form at this point. But I saw a Salvador Dali exhibition in, I think it was Ghent, where he did some video art, which was capital S surrealism, because obviously he's a surrealist artist, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that consisted of really big close-ups of eyes, mouths, all that kind of stuff. And it looks primitive to the point of almost being funny from our perspective, from a perspective of 50, 60, 70 years later. But it was the first time anybody was kind of sort of playing around with, or one of the first times I should say, people were playing around with the idea of video as an artistic form rather than just painting. And it's extremely crude. It's very, very primitive. But those kind of extreme close-ups were part of what Dali was doing in that piece, which unfortunately I cannot remember the name of. Although one name that I do remember is Peter Goldman directed Strawberry Fields Forever. Okay. So we were talking about that earlier. That's the answer to the question.
Just checking, when you were talking about the close-ups and Salvador Dali, you were talking about film. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you
that's
talking
right.
about in Shan Andalou, which is the famous Buñuel film, co-written with Salvador Dali, and which has a very, very famous shot of ever-increasing close-up of an eye before then it gets sliced, and there's an edit in there where it goes from a human eye, to a pig's eye, but of course it's imperceptible. And even this was, I think, the 30s.
Yeah, so it'd be 1930s. Yeah,
it's kind of like a really, really famous piece, and but it's the one interesting thing in the whole of that film.
Yeah, it's not good at all. It's not good at all, but it's interesting to see that kind of like the development of those techniques. And I do wonder if the close-ups in this are in some way kind of influenced by that, because like earlier on I was saying, I think this is a surreal rather than a psychedelic song. So it was just, I don't know, it was just a connection that formed in my head when you were talking earlier. You can choose to accept it or dismiss it as you see.
No, it's fine. No, it's interesting, and also bearing in mind, you went Salvador Dali to my Simply Red. Is all I'm saying there. I do look. It is. I mean, it's interesting, and it's different. And my whole point is I find it hard to divorce myself from the cultural context in which I grew up for some things, better for some things than for others. But with this, I think I'm kind of, aware of the my own cultural context. I mean, and let's face it, a lot of music videos in the early 80s were bloody awful.
Oh yeah, some of them are dreadful.
But I also think I quite like some of those narrative videos as well. So, like Vienna, or, Don't You Want Me as well, or, some of the early ABC videos as well. And I think maybe from that period, I had a little bit more of a fondness for those narrative videos as opposed to those, it's just a bunch of guys dicking about kind of videos.
Hello, Duran Duran.
I don't know. There was some narrative. Hungry Like the Wolf is a narrative.
I do really like the video.
Come
Hungry
on.
Like the Wolf. I've got to admit, and I really like that song. It's not they're not a favorite band of mine, but I love Hungry Like the Wolf.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So there are definitely some pretentious videos. And who? I mean, are you not aware of the underlying narrative of the girls on film video with all that semi-naked, wrestling going on? I mean, the whole. Anyway, let's not go there. Yeah, but the fact that they were making it is important in itself, and I think again it kind of adds to this as a cultural product with all the weight that comes with it, as opposed to a song. I think it's really hard just to focus in on the song and, oh, listen to this, listen to that, or it's quite sparse in this bit. Oh, isn't it amazing what Ringo's doing? Oh, that guitar is amazing, which is kind of what I want to do. But you can't help but end up talking about it as a cultural product, because it has become weightier than just a simple song on its own would be. I think without the video, I don't think it has the same weight. Without everything else that's going on at the time, without possibly even without the connection between Lennon having recently met Yoko Ono for the first time as well, that maybe again it doesn't quite have the same significance. There's all of that stuff that's tied up in it, which gives it a cultural context that people like. In the fact that we've sort of, it's the first recording in the Sgt. Pepper sessions as well, lends it that significance. It's that 66, 67 heightened sense of pop becoming more than just a singles entity, and becoming something that is that little bit weightier as well. And this and Tomorrow Never Knows and Pet Sounds and various things like that are part of that move towards something that is just a thing that people buy that happens to be on a little bit of vinyl. So I think it has a weightiness that lots of people buy into. And I kind of listen to it as a song and watch the video and think, I like it, but not as much as the rest of you. And I think that's where I get stuck, because I want to see it as a song only, and I think it's really hard to do it, because you end up in all of those conversations like, oh, well, Engelbert Humperdinck, oh my God, oh, isn't it really sad that this didn't get to number one? I think, no, not really. It doesn't make a difference as to whether or not it's any good, does it?
No, absolutely doesn't. In fact, I think that is a point kind of worth emphasizing. I don't want to overdo the whole kind of but yeah, obviously this song deserved to go to number one. No, it doesn't. No song deserves to go to number one. The charts are just a popularity contest. That's all they are. If you sell more records, you go to number one. There's no quality or lack of quality which is inferred by that. Like, there are some unbelievable songs which have been to number one, and there have been some dreadful songs that have been to number one. It doesn't matter. It's just a popularity contest. Nobody deserves to be at number one, and if Engelbert sold more records than the Beatles, then he deserves to be there. There is some confusion over that because this is a double A side, but that's a separate thing. But yeah, it is worth pointing out. Yeah, the charts are just a popularity contest, and nobody is always going to be number one, not even the Beatles.
Let's caveat that for our Swedish and Vietnamese listeners. Of course, we're talking about in the UK.
Yes.
And the Beatles have had an uninterrupted run of number one singles from Please Please Me
Yes.
through to this, when the uninterrupted run became interrupted. Actually, you could argue that the fact that it didn't get to number one kind of adds to the myth and the mystique. And that if it had got
I absolutely think that's true. Yeah, it definitely does. People buy into that kind of sense of, oh, it was,
robbed.
They were done by, hurt by, and all that kind of stuff, which
robbed, just like the Scotland football team at the World Cup.
Oh, I don't give a fuck about football. As well, I did a stand-up gig a week and a half ago where that was my opening line on stage was, I'm a 53-year-old Glaswegian man and I do not give a fuck about football. I got cheers and boos, so I'm quite proud of that.
But do you not care about the fact that, again, sort of in cultural references, the fact that all over parts of Boston and Miami, there are hundreds of statues that now have cones on them?
I am proud of that. That's a separate thing. That's a Glaswegian thing. Yes, it's made me very, very happy to see that. Yes. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all So yeah, that cultural significance. The we're number two, robbed, and but yeah, I think it just has given it that little bit extra. In a way that I find interesting. And you could probably write, has somebody written a book about this? He probably could.
It seems likely, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it, but Yeah, that's fine. Let's go to university and have a debate about the fact that we have now moved from, and importantly as well, we've moved from a band creating records that they can then go and play live, to a band who are creating a cultural artifact. And I think being conscious about creating something of cultural significance, hence why can't play it live. We're not really interested in going to a TV studio. Let's record us dicking about somewhere, having fun in order to support our current cultural identity, and that artistic side that they've included, those sort of surrealist elements that are in there. Oh yeah, Paul McCartney jumping backwards up a tree and then adjusting some light bulbs. Woo! Or let's all drop paint over a piano. You know, it's very kind of artistic statement. You know, it's not just four guys in suits on a stage playing their instruments. It's, look at us, we have broadened our horizons now. We are more than just those lovable mop tops, in a way that some bands really just never quite got. And there were still lots of those bands, you know, in the suits at this point, you know, doing very kind of traditional songs. Hollies, I'm looking in your direction, you know. So they are a cultural product now, and that's fine. Not all parts of those are going to work for all people. And I would imagine there are probably quite a lot of people who might have listened to this and thinking, well, you know, I think I prefer when I'm 64. I'm not saying I prefer when I'm 64, by the way, but, you know.
That'll be a conversation for the future.
Yeah. When I'm 64 is roughly when we're going to get to it.
Yeah. Excellent. So given what a cultural force this is, and given what an artistic statement this is, and given the weighty significance of what this is, you would think that there would be some really great cover versions, right?
No, instead what you get are people who are doing versions of the beat. I mean, not cover, well, there is cover, is basically very, very similar. And it's a really depressing range. I mean, to the point where the only one that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about was the Peter Gabriel one in 1976, partly because it was from a soundtrack to a film that, and actually the film's gone off the top of my head now, but it just sounded like it's an absolute disaster waiting to happen. Was it 1976 and all that? I think it was. Oh no, I've got it. It was basically, it was taking footage from World War II and putting Beatles covers of Beatles songs over the top of it, which just sounds ghastly. And even worse than that, I think I remember reading that the producer was originally the producer on the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band film involving the Bee Gees, but for some reason left that project and retained some of the rights to some of the songs from that, and was looking around for things to do, and this was it. This was it. And the only thing that interests, because the version, you know, it's just, for all I care, it could be Peter Gabriel singing over the Beatles backing track. It's kind of what it sounds like to an extent. So got a lot of these sound like singer singing over Beatles type backing track. The only thing that really interests me about this, it was his first post Genesis release. His first solo stuff that he released didn't come out until 77, and this was 76. So somebody talked him into doing this, saying, Peter, you've left Genesis, you've decided to go solo. What we'd really like you to do is to sing Strawberry Fields Forever, as, and for it to be used on this really bizarre / incredibly tasteless film. And Peter goes, yeah, you know what, I'm up for that.
Well, I have a question about the Peter Gabriel version, because I think it's very, very funny. It's quite dreadful. It's really bad. But I can't decide whether it's funny intentionally, as in he's kind of taking the piss, or has it just ended up being something he's trying to do seriously, done it really bad, And so it's ended up being very funny as a result. I genuinely can't make my mind up as to which it is. I think it's the second one. I think he's trying to take it seriously and it's all gone terribly, terribly wrong. But I'm not certain. It's either way, it's dreadfully funny.
Bearing in mind that you and I have experience of sharing a student house with someone who loved those early Peter Gabriel Genesis albums, and you probably, if you would have looked at his record collection at any point, you probably would have seen some of the ludicrous pictures of Peter Gabriel in his stage garb, and the one that springs to mind is him dressed as a flower with the bits of the petal coming off. I think either are possible. He has proved to be someone who at times who has not taken himself seriously, but he has also proved to be someone at times who's come across at least as someone taking himself way too seriously. So take your pick. Your pick. It could either be being incredibly artistic and embodying all of those things we've been talking about, or just having a laugh.
Yeah, I really can't decide which, but it's worth a listen just because it's very funny. The only other version I want to talk about is the Candy Flip one, which I remember from the 80s, but I don't know why I remember it from the 80s, because it's not, I was going to say it's not very good. It is pretty much just karaoke, right? But it's got some slightly dreamy vocals rather than sort of slightly more upfront vocals. It's not an embarrassment, but also it's kind of nothing.
I can't even picture it. It wasn't one that I listened to, and I did get through quite a few, most of which are just sort of blanked. But maybe it's another one of those examples that it's a song that everyone loves to do, but nobody is really brave enough to interpret. Everyone feels like they have to pay homage, and again, it's that sense of. And I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. I know. Look at how good we are, or how weighty we are, by our choice of cover.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that behind it.
Yeah. By the way, apologies, and hey, dear listener, maybe JG's going to be really clever and edit this and drop it back into the video chat. But the one thing I did want to mention about the video is that we get that sense of where they're kind of cutting from one face to the extreme close up, and then one face kind of cuts into the next, into the next, into the next. The other band that I think has done that several times with lessening impact is, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few REM videos where they do that.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Definite trope there. It's like face, 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 face. Ta-da! Look at us.
I have a feeling the One I Love does that.
That definitely does that, but I'm sure there are others. Maybe not faces, but maybe they sort of use it as a, we've not featured the band in the video, so what we're going to do right at the end is have a shot of one, and cut to two, cut to three, cut to four, end. It just feels like that is a trope. So yeah.
Also, I'm not going to be clever enough to drop this in, so it's just going to be at the end of the episode.
That's fair enough. So it's one of those songs that is very easy to cover, but is also uncoverable. That's what I've decided.
I agree.
Yeah. Dear listener, again, if you've got a preferred cover for this, by whoever, that's fine. I mean, I could be really boring and say best cover versions, the Analogues, but I'm not going to do that. I got nothing more to say on that.
Okay, well, score then, please.
You're going to give this 10, aren't you?
Score, please.
8.
8, very good. Yes, I'm going to give this a 10. Absolutely, yeah. This is one of my favourite Beatles songs, one of my favourite songs of all time. I can't possibly give it anything else. So, yeah, 10 for me.
It's no Golden Slumbers, though, is it?
Well, yeah, I've been waiting for that all bloody episode, but you got there in the end, so that's absolutely fine. Excellent. Good. Lovely. Right, before this deteriorates any further, I'm going to make an executive decision and bring things to a close. You can really get a hold of us. You can contact us by email We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com, and we are Beatles on Instagram. You can find my blog at jgmcquarrie.scot, where I do actually discuss Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane in my We're Number 2 series. So if you're desperate to have some more of my insights into either or both of those songs, then you can always look it up there. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that more people can find the show. Andrew is now holding up a sketch of me, and it's not quite as terrible as I had imagined, but it's not exactly the dictionary definition of flattering either. So, good. I'm going to end this episode really quickly. Next episode, it's Penny Lane. What else would it be? Thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye.